Hello, fellow anti-austerity campaigners. The Dissident drum here. I just wanted to put up a quick video to put some thoughts down, record them. I've put some blogs out recently, the last week or so, and they've been quite wordy, so I know a lot of people get turned off reading long posts, so I thought I'd put something quick on video here. Thank you to anybody who's shared the information that I've put out. Hopefully it's been useful. This week we've had news of a new whistleblower in the civil service who's exposed some potential fraud among people in the highest public offices in the land. Ministers are involved and even a member of the judiciary. And the story brought me back to something that I'd done previously. Last January, 12 months, January 2013, I sent a letter to Enda, and I got acknowledgement of the receipt of the letter from his office. And the letter contained 43 questions about strange findings that I'd come across on the internet, and it was prompted by stuff that some people in the UK had done and identified in the UK. And the same was true in Ireland, and it turned out that on Dun and Bradstreet, which is a body which maintains a registry of companies worldwide, there were what appeared to be companies registered under the names of some of our politicians, and also in the names of public offices. One of them was on Taoiseach, and I'll provide a link to the letter in the description of the video. But basically, it raised some questions. Why did there appear to be a company called on Taoiseach registered? And I would have thought that on Taoiseach is simply a title. I didn't understand why there would need to be some registration into a legal entity, a corporation, under that title. And there were others as well. The Department of the Taoiseach is another one. The Minister of State at the Department of the Taoiseach is another one. The Ceann Comhairle was another one. The Government of Ireland was actually another one. And there are various other ones, including Phil Hogan TD. So I tried to, I didn't do much delving other than send a letter asking for an explanation to the Taoiseach, and then 22 months later I'm still waiting. The questions haven't been answered, which leaves me in a position where I have to, without any more information, I draw my own conclusions. Why would this be the case? And the news of the whistleblower breaking and potential story of fraud among politicians and ministers coming out. My conclusion to the existence of these companies using the titles of public office and legislative bodies in Ireland could only be, or possibly be, for reasons of tax evasion. My suspicion, and I have no basis for it, but like I say, without an explanation being provided, it's the conclusion I come to, that somebody like Enda Kenny potentially doesn't pay any income tax in Ireland. Instead, what he does is the salary that he has of 200 and whatever thousand a year, he doesn't get that through the PAYE system, where PRSI and PAYE and USC is deducted. Instead, maybe a company called on Taoiseach submits an invoice to the clerk of the Dáil, who looks after expenses and all that type of thing. And the clerk of the Dáil issues a cheque or a payment to on Taoiseach. And on paper, and in the eyes of possibly the Controller and Auditor General, it looks perfectly reasonable. But the invoice might be for the gross amount of the Taoiseach's salary, so he's not getting paid the net amount. And the company doesn't seem to be registered in Ireland, because the registration and all these other companies, They can't be found on the company's registration office website, which is the Irish body that maintains the registry of trading companies. So if the company on Taoiseach is not registered in Ireland, maybe it doesn't have bank accounts in Ireland. And when a payment is made to on Taoiseach for salary or expenses or pension or whatever like that, maybe it's not banked in Ireland to evade tax. Now this is speculation, but again, I'm still waiting for an explanation. It would explain why Bertie Ahern, for example, who was a previous Taoiseach, despite being whatever number of years he was in politics, 30 years, and how many years a minister and how many years a Taoiseach, he never had a bank account. The other possible explanation is that by incorporating themselves in this way, that they indemnify themselves from any kind of prosecution for unlawful or dodgy activity that may be discovered at some stage. So I asked these questions to the Taoiseach, Enda Kenny. There were 43 questions. They referred also to the office of the Department of the Taoiseach. And there were strange things like the registered address of this company on Taoiseach is Enda Kenny's constituency address in Hawthorne Avenue in Castlebar in County Mayo. So it was strange that there would be a registration for on Taoiseach that wouldn't have an address in government buildings. That didn't seem to make sense. So I asked him, were there previous addresses for on Taoiseach? Possibly Drumcondra or County Longford or County Offaly. Don't know. So maybe this will be part of what the whistleblower reveals in evidence that he's given to Public Accounts Committee and relevant TDs who will investigate it. I know somebody else sent similar questions in a letter to Chief Justice Susan Denham of the Supreme Court for her to answer why these bodies exist using the names of public offices in Ireland, that it's potential, if they have nothing to do with Enda Kenny or any other minister, and there's no association, then maybe somebody else is trading fraudulently using the offices of the Department of the Taoiseach or on Taoiseach. Now you might wonder, why did I go to the Gardaí with this, and why don't I go to the Gardaí? I didn't. I probably should have, but in a strange twist, the Garda headquarters in the Phoenix Park is also registered as a company on Dun and Bradstreet, and it's not found on the company's registration office website in Ireland. And there are maybe 40 other Garda stations that can be found by a simple search in the Dun and Bradstreet website. If you go to the website, put in Garda and select Ireland as the country, and you'll see a whole list of stations. And this also might explain, it makes sense to me anyway, that this is why we've seen an anomaly between Garda operations working in, for the public essentially, and Garda operations that appear to be working for private interest. I was in Dublin on the 11th of October. There was a massive protest, I'd say at least well in excess of 100,000 people. And I counted maybe 20 Gardaí, and I walked the whole route from O'Connell Street, up Westmoreland Street, down Nassau Street, up Kildare Street, past the Dáil, around Stephen's Green, back down to Dame Street, back to Westmoreland Street. I walked the whole way, and I didn't see more than 20 Gardaí on duty for a crowd of 100,000. And yet you'll see pictures, all over the internet of the North Dublin estates where the water meters are going in, and in some of the pictures there are more than 20 Gardaí on duty. And then a similar protest in Keepack off the Navan Road during the week, and there were no Gardaí hardly present, maybe one or two. I also took part in a march that went from Stephen's Green around to Fitzwilliam Square last year, where there was a group were protesting against the multinational abuse of our tax system, basically. But the march was headed towards the offices of the American Chamber of Commerce, or whatever it's called, which is in Fitzwilliam Square. And I counted 28 protesters and 54 Gardaí, which is, fairly excessive by any standards. But it would seem to make sense that the Gardaí aren't present for massive public demonstrations, but where private enterprise and big money is being targeted, they seem to be well able to attend. There were protests at the Dáil last year where Gardaí, there were anti-austerity, anti-bailout, bank bailout protests, and Gardaí actually told us that they were there on unpaid work, and they were called in on duty, and they weren't going to get paid, using their their unpaid days that are part of the Haddington Road Agreement, or whatever agreement they fall under, Croke Park or whatever. So if the state can't afford to pay Gardaí to come to demonstrations like this, who's paying for them to go and attend water meters being installed, or to attend protests, round the clock protests for months and months and months in Rossport? And it would make perfect sense if it turns out that Gardaí do have a facility to be hired out as a private security firm by big money who can afford it, because obviously the state can't afford it. 20 protesters for a crowd of 100,000 people in Dublin. The state doesn't have any money to pay overtime or extra duty to Gardaí, but Dennis O'Brien would, and Shell would. So that's part of the questions that were raised in my mind as to why these apparent corporations, companies were listed, and how they might be trading and how they might be operating. If that's the case, then it obviously means that Gardaí who are hired out to Shell or GMCC or wherever like that aren't acting in their capacity as Garda Síochána. They're actually private security firms, which would also explain why people maybe haven't been arrested and charged at some of these protests, because the Gardaí aren't operating within their jurisdiction. So there's a whole load of questions to be raised and answered. I'm perfectly happy to have a reasonable explanation given to me, and I'm perfectly happy to be disproven, in my own, to have my own conclusions disproven and clarified, and that's fine. But like I said, I'm still waiting 22 months for Enda Kenny to answer my letter, answer the questions that were in my letter. And if there was a simple, reasonable, logical explanation, and everything might be perfectly legal, I don't understand why the questions weren't answered. So that's my tuppence worth for tonight. Stay safe out there. I would encourage everybody to attend every protest that they can. It doesn't matter if it's the 6th of December, 8th of December, 10th of December, if it's next week, if you have a weekly Sunday march in your town or your city. I go as often as I can to the Dublin Says No march, which is we meet at noon at the Central Bank in Dublin, and it's an hour out of your week, and it's a demonstration. It's a demonstration of protest, a demonstration of how we feel about what's happening to our country. And I would encourage everybody to take part. Now is the time to stand up, to be counted. Your children will be immensely proud of you. And hopefully we can do something to turn around what really is the systematic destruction of Irish society by a political force, a political class, and a wealthy class that are absolutely hell-bent on raping the country for as much as they can. while they can, and it has to stop now.